Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, and really excited to have a really exciting guest in studio today. And as you know, on this show, I get the opportunity to interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are many times shaping or even changing the overall sports landscape. And that's some of the things we're going to be talking about today on our show. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our 76 Capital website. So let's get to it. My guest today is Eric Menell. He is the head of JP Morgan Sports Investment Banking Team. Eric, welcome to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thanks, Wayne. Great to be here.
Yeah, really excited to have you here. Almost fell over on my chair as I was just having this. Super excited that you're here, and it's just awesome. I mean, you and GP got named the head of JP Morgan's new investment banking or sports investment banking group. And I was just super excited to see that. That's such an incredible institution is focused on sports. Tell me more about it.
Sure. So we've always had a great sports investment banking practice across the firm in team financing in the private bank, in venue financing in the public finance arena, in mergers and acquisitions, in financing the leagues. And given that sports transactions are becoming more complex and substantially larger, we felt like we needed to cover sports like we cover our corporates with one big group team tackle. So in the US, myself, and in Europe.
One big group team tackle. I like that. I like that.
Sports reference. And my colleague, John Piero in Europe, are trying to integrate all of our different functionalities into one coordinated effort. And it's only been a few months, but it's been great. And we've had a couple of great wins already. And we're really excited about what the future holds for our sports practice.
Could you talk about some of those wins or some of the groups that you're working with?
So I can't talk specifically about our wins, but we're focused on anything that's sports or sports adjacent. And so obviously teams, leagues, sanctioning bodies, venues, adjacent real estate, sports adjacent businesses such as betting, technology, software, college sports, youth sports, anything that has a component to sports, whether it's the actual game on the field or something that enables it technologically or in the media, is where we're focused.
So maybe break it down even a little further. So what do you do for a team, a league, an owner? What can JP Morgan do for them?
So we provide a full suite of services. So if someone wants to sell a team or sell a minority stake in a team, we advise them on how to get the transaction done. If somebody wants to buy a team or buy a minority stake, we advise them on how to get the transaction done. If someone needs money to finance a purchase, whether it's a loan directly to them with their assets as collateral, we do that. If they need to build a ballpark, an arena, or some sort of venue, we can finance that. If the leagues need, money or strategic advice, we can provide that. And that's just for sports. That's not the adjacencies or any of the corporates or any of the media businesses for which we do very similar things. And so it really is truly a comprehensive offering, which there are not many firms on the planet that can do what we can do on a global basis.
Yeah, that was one of the points I wanted to get to. That was one of the big things, certainly, that we were excited about when we heard the news that JP Morgan was going to have a dedicated sports investment bank. We were excited that it was you, that you were one of the heads of this, because not many other groups can do what JP Morgan can offer. Or is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement. We are a one-stop shop for pretty much anything that a sports team, a league, an owner, or a corporate could possibly need.
And is there any sort of size, in not from an investment perspective, but like, is there the kind of when you look at the types of deals you look to do, are there certain leagues, let's just say, that you're focused on right now that would be the best for you at JP Morgan?
I think obviously on a global basis, we're focused on the largest leagues, given the size of our platform. Time is our most valuable asset.
Right.
And so we only have so much time in a day and we don't have unlimited resources. But ultimately, it's about the relationship. And, we're interested in doing transactions that are really interesting and that can chart new territory. And we've made a focus on doing things like that in college, which aren't necessarily enormous transactions, but really innovative. We've done some of those transactions in the professional world that aren't necessarily massive, but are really interesting and innovative. We advised Qatar when they made their investment into Monumental, which was the first sovereign wealth fund transaction investing in U.S. sports. In dollar amounts, it wasn't massive, but it was different. It was the first, and it was really interesting.
And I mean, that was a transformative type deal. I mean, that was something that had never been done before. I mean, having a sovereign wealth fund investing into a group that owns an NFL, an NHL team, and an NBA team. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yep, first time it's ever been done.
Now, do you think, so sort of zooming back out a little bit, right? I mean, the fact that you have taken this step at JP Morgan to focus on the sports industry. I mean, when you talk about the overall asset class of sports, it's certainly something that we talk a lot about here at 76 Capital, and our belief that this is truly the industry has become an asset class, and truly has been one for a while. What do you see as part of the future of this current asset class?
Yeah, so it's interesting because if you think about what's happening in the broader media landscape in the 90s, the 2000s, and early 2010s, a lot of media asset classes have either been disintermediated or materially disrupted. Radio, television, cable,
right?
Cable networks, movie theaters, directories, magazines, right? All been disrupted or disintermediated. And then you think about sports, and sports has only grown and substantially increased in value because its content is king. It delivers a massive audience. It's appointment viewing. You have to watch it real time. And it's really a community thing, right? And so the leagues and the team owners have really benefited from this because you've got this really interesting dynamic, which is playing out right now in the NBA, where you've got the streamers who want the content and have a lot of reach, but are still nascent. And then the legacy media rights holders who still have a lot of reach, right? But some other businesses on the cable network side have less reach than they did in the past. And so there's this tension, and the leagues are benefiting from it, right? You look at the franchise values massively increased over the last 10, 15, 20 years. They've grown at double-digit compounded annual growth rates, which is really, really attractive. And they're not really correlated to the economy. And so when you think about this as an asset class, right, it's growing, it's large, it's really protected. The revenues are, subscription-based generally, right? Season tickets, TV rights, media rights, and the leagues have opened up, right? The ability for private equity firms, institutional capital to come and invest in the sector, which makes it truly investable in its own asset class.
Well, that's certainly a big thing that we've all been talking about is private equity entering the industry and what that means. And you mentioned earlier about sovereign wealth funds coming in, and the leagues now figuring out what the rules and barriers are going to be around allowing private equity in. The NFL is, as we tape this in August of 2024, the NFL hasn't said that they're that private equity come in yet, but it's probably a matter of time when that does happen. What do you think that private equity? Why is it so attractive? I guess for private equity.
So if you think about private equity firms, what are they really looking for in investment? They want a business that has a large addressable market. They want a business that has loyal, consumers or purchasers or fans or whatever the case may be. They want brand affinity. And they want businesses that have high recurring revenues. In traditional corporates, they also want high margins, but that's not really the way sports businesses work necessarily. And so you think about the sports landscape, and they check all of those boxes, right? On the revenue side, as I said before, it's tickets are highly reoccurring, and the media rights are contracted distributions. Every year, right, there's more fans that are created, and that's great for brand loyalty. And people want to watch this because they have to talk about it the next day. And so that's great, right? Private equity firms have also diversified in how they think about their returns. They have different pockets of capital that don't need to earn the same returns as their true private equity divisions. They can earn slightly lower returns. and they could hold for longer periods of time, which is important to the leagues. And so it's actually been a nice mix where private equity firms have been, enabled, or institutional capital has been enabled to invest in the leagues in a very specific way that suits the league and the owner's needs, but also protects the traditional governance models that the leagues value so much.
And it's really interesting, that balance. I mean, and also at the same time, I think it's interesting to note that a lot of the owners are coming from the world of private equity.
Yeah.
So they're comfortable. Do you see that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's really been a shift over the past, X amount of years of what the ownership groups look like in the major sports leagues. And you think about the NFL as an example, right? In 2014, the Bills sold for $1.4 billion, right? Then you had the Panthers, the Broncos, the Commanders. Most of the other teams haven't transacted over $1 billion. And you have families that have owned these businesses for a very, very, very long time. And they're going to be approaching generational shifts where the matriarch or the patriarch may not, be alive forever. And you need to figure out what to do with these assets. And they've become so incredibly valuable that, having liquidity opportunities to maybe figure out how to manage some of the generational shifts is really important. And there's way more billionaires than there are teams. And these are really great assets to own. And so that's why you're seeing some of the turnover and the shift from the legacy family model to more of the newer wealth from private equity firms, from the tech world, from the hedge funds, et cetera.
It's interesting when you talk about generational, change, right? I mean, that was the kind of the surprise, I guess, in Boston with the Celtics. I mean, the surprise was, they just win the championship, and all of a sudden they're for sale, right? And it had nothing to do with anything other than, and they still are for sale at this point. But that the generational shift.
Yeah, and you see it across all sports. There's estate tax issues to manage, and so the leagues are very attuned to this, and they're very focused on how to manage the generational shifts. But it's going to happen, more and more as some of the, the legacy family owners, continue to increase in age, and the next generation may or may not want to continue.
So, you mentioned earlier, we've been talking about professional side, the collegiate side. Now there's so much disruption and opportunity across youth sports as well. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about all of this? And, what are some of the areas that you're specifically looking for to get involved with at JP Morgan?
So we're equal opportunity. We'll get involved in whatever, our clients think is interesting, or whatever we think is interesting. We have spent a fair amount of time in college over the past couple of years, and it's a really interesting landscape, right? If you take the positive for a minute, the college brands are unbelievable, right? The fan affinity is.
I mean, arguably more. The affinity is more on college than there is on the pro side.
I agree. It's amazing to go to a college football game, right? One of the great rivalries, and just see the passion and like the fan commitment. And it's a very special thing. And so college sports has never been more popular. College sports has never had, a better product on the field or on the court. However, right, behind that, there's some real challenges in college sports. You've got school hopping from conference to conference, right? The Pac-12 went to the Pac-2 in a matter of months. You've got, the Big Ten that has teams spread all across America, which makes it hard for student athletes.
We were talking about that great video they did recently put out, right? Where it spans the country, right? The Big Ten starts in California and rolls all the way east.
It's truly a national platform now. The economic models in college are challenged, right? If you're in the ACC and you have a competitor school in the SEC, South Carolina or Georgia or Florida, right, on day one of the year, the SEC team's making $20, $30 million more a year than you are in media revenues. And so how do you recruit against that, right? And so it creates sort of inequities in the conferences. And then you've got all of the house litigation. You've got players potentially getting paid. Where's the money going to come from? You've got NIL and transfer portal restrictions being lifted, and people are, school hopping to try to generate more dollars for themselves. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty and, a lot of issues that need to be solved, and they're really not simple to solve.
It's one of the things that, we both I guess I really agree on is that it's not simple to be solved. There's so many experts out there today that are really trying to figure this out. But the problem is all the different factors you just mentioned and how you kind of bring together a group, all of these different groups to try to figure it out. I mean, do you have any ideas from your side? I mean, has you or your team or someone at JP Morgan like, well, this is the way we should potentially do this, or you trying to just bring together all the different groups and seeing if they can figure it out together?
If I had the perfect solution, I wouldn't be sitting here. So I don't have the perfect solution, but having spoken to a bunch of athletic directors and a bunch of CFOs at schools and people in the community and commissioners, right? There's no silver bullet here. It's really complicated. You've got the schools and the Big Four conferences now, plus two in the Pac-2, and every school is going to feel something different, right? Every level of the school might want something different, and then you got to get the conferences on board, and then you got to get the student athletes on board. Then you got to get the NCAA and the government on board. There's just levels of people that need to be on board, and I'm not sure anyone can build a consensus. I think everyone agrees that the way it's going today isn't sustainable in the long term, but I don't think that there's 5 people that have the same opinion if you asked 100 people what should happen, and that's what makes this really challenging.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, what about one of the groups, or we mentioned media a little bit before, but you think about media today across sports, it's gotten much larger, right? Because you're now talking about, when you talk about media, you're adding in companies like Google, you're adding in Netflix, you're adding in Apple, you're adding in Amazon, right? I mean, these are groups that were once known probably from your past more on the tech side of things, right? And now they're here in sports. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing, what's happening with those major technology companies coming into the world of sports.
Yeah, so they're a real force to be reckoned with. They have built amazing platforms, not always focused necessarily on media, right? Amazon's got their big retail platform, Apple's got their device platform, YouTube and Google have the search platform, and so they have amazing platforms that are really vast, and they have enormous financial resources. They also have a lot of people that are on their platforms, which is very attractive to the sports leagues. They also have the ability and sort of the technological know-how to try to evolve sports consumption into the next wave, right? And certain things that fans don't really enjoy about sports consumption, like blackouts, right, ultimately are likely to go away. And by the way, it doesn't have to only be these companies. ESPN is going to launch their D2C product, I believe, sometime next year, and it's going to be great, right? ESPN has unbelievable set of rights. They've got a great tech platform as well, and they have a great brand. And so managing the shift from linear and cable networks to digital is going to be really critical, and it's hard because cable networks were a great business model for everybody in the sports ecosystem. Everybody paid for it, but very few people watched it. In the streaming world, right, it's a la carte, and if you want to watch it, you pay for it. If you don't, you don't. And so I think the leagues and the teams are going to have to, figure out how they evolve in a world where the economics may or may not be the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see. We were talking, earlier this morning about the Olympics, right? And now, and what NBC has done with Peacock. I mean, a big part of what they're doing with I think it's the Gold Zone, if I got getting it right. I mean, it's amazing to watch that. It's really impressive, and what's going to happen, with on Christmas this year. I mean, is Christmas going to be called just Netflix? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what household in this country, probably, even around the world are going to be tuned in on Netflix to watch the NFL games. It's really it's a major shift that's occurring now.
Yep, it's a shift, and it's going to happen over time. I think one of the things that has to be managed is finding the game, right? And so if you think about Major League Baseball today, or even the new NBA deal, they're going to be on a lot more platforms than they used to be on. And so you need to make sure the consumer experience is satisfactory.
Isn't the answer just AI? No, keep kidding.
AI is not the answer to everything, Wayne. And so I think we just have to watch the consumer experience, because it's been easy to find, the NBA on ESPN and TNT. and now you got to watch it in different places. I'm sure they will figure it out. But streaming creates a lot of interesting opportunities for ways people can consume games, and they can watch it differently, right? And there's no bandwidth constraints like there were on linear television.
I mean, it's really, it's another exciting part of the overall asset class of sports, from the media, the technology side. I mean, the fact that you have, the other thing is just global expansion. I mean, we touch a little bit on that, as the thoughts now. You had Adam Silver come out and talk about, being able to, expand into Europe and do that actually with a little more vigor maybe than in the past. But, you seeing NFL games being played everywhere, Major League Baseball games being played all over the place. I mean, like the talent pool is not just here in the U.S. for our leagues. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing from a JP Morgan perspective on the globalization of sports.
Yeah, so you're spot on. I mean, if you just think about what's happening with the NFL, right? They're playing in Brazil for the first time. They play in Mexico. They play in Germany. They play in England. Think about the NBA and the number of players in the NBA that are now international, right? You look at the Dream Team from 1992, and you look at the games today, and we're still the best, but it's really, really competitive, right? And then just watching the Olympics, you see all these other athletes from all these other countries that are amazing, right? And so we're definitely seeing the globalization. The streaming providers help globalize because Amazon Prime and Netflix are global businesses. So it's easier to drive consumption on a global basis if you have the rights to do so. And so that's why we made our practice global, myself in the US and John Piero in Europe, is because frankly, a lot of owners and a lot of people investing in sports are doing it in the US and also in Europe, right? And people are going both ways. And there's so many US investors in European soccer across the major leagues.
Yeah, that's been an unbelievable trend over the last several years. I mean, to just see how many U.S. owners of teams here are now owning teams in Europe, and for the most part, I would say, at least from what we see, is most of the deals have been done on the soccer / football side of the world. But there's more to do. There's a lot of other sports. There's potentially even bringing some of the major leagues to Europe and sort of expanding that Eastern division, which is now the East Coast of the U.S.
Yep.
Maybe that Eastern division expands to Europe, and that's something that could happen pretty soon.
I think it'll happen someday. Not so sure it's the next year, 2, 3, but I think someday, absolutely.
That's something that we think about a lot, and we talk about that, and just trying to think of like how that could potentially play out. I mean, I guess look, it's not as much of a big deal as it used to be. So, what I'd love to turn the conversation a little bit about more on you,
sure,
and your background, and maybe talk about where did you grow up and how did you become who you are today. Talk about some of the things that you're
sure. So I grew up in Washington D.C., not in Maryland, not in Virginia, but in Washington D.C., and went to college in St. Louis, WashU in St. Louis, and thought I was going to be a lawyer. And I decided during the LSATs that wasn't going to be my career path. So I called an audible and switched to trying to get a job in investment banking, which I somehow did at Bear Stearns in 1997. I did casinos and leisure companies for my first 3 years, and then decided I wanted to switch into doing media mergers and acquisitions. And I did that for 8 years until Bear Stearns ran into some trouble in 2008 global financial crisis, and we were bought by JP Morgan. I joined JP Morgan in 2008. I've been doing, media and sports since, 2001 at Bear Stearns, and since 2008 at JP Morgan.
So it's amazing, being able to, in effect, really stay with one company, for all these years. I think that's really incredible. And you mentioned sort of the media and sports, and you've been doing that as well for your career. Does your personal fandom ever intermix with your with business? How does that happen? Because a lot of the questions, a lot of times people will say to me, and I'm sure to you, I love sports. I would love to be in this business. It's so much fun because I get to do sports all day. But they're really just talking about their passion for their team, and they just want to be around players and things like that. Has it ever crossed over in your world?
Listen, we all grew up liking teams, right? I grew up in DC, so I was an avid Bullets, now the Wizards, Redskins, now the Commanders, Caps, and Orioles fan.
At least they didn't change those names.
I didn't, not yet. And so, you always have a passion for the teams you grew up with, but at the end of the day, my job is in business, and my job is to provide advice to people who want advice, or provide capital to people who need capital. And I have to be dispassionate about it, right? It's fun to go to games. It's great to meet athletes and celebrities, but at the end of the day, right, I have to serve my client, and that's what we do.
Has there been an incredible sports event that you were there for business? And you're like, oh my God, this is more, as much as it was about business, it was like, I'm so happy I was able to attend.
That's a good question. I love going to live events. I love going to concerts. I love going to sporting events. I just think Broadway shows, the talent that all of these folks have is just amazing. And so when you get treated to, an athletic performance or a Broadway performance where someone is just so good, I find that to be incredibly inspiring. And so I can't remember all the games that I've been to or one specific event that is better than the others, but I can tell you I'm incredibly excited for the World Cup to come to the US in, a few years, because that to me is one of the great sporting events, on a global basis, and the passion of the fans and the excitement and the cheering. It's just amazing. I went in the US when it was in '94, and I'm super excited about going again when it's here.
That's going to really be incredible. I think it's going to really do some, special things for our country as well. I mean, I thought you were going to say the Masters, because last time I saw you in New York, you were really glowing from your trip there. That was special.
The Masters is pretty amazing. I love golf, and just seeing how good these folks are at golf is just amazing. And being in Augusta was just one of the most spectacular places on the planet. It was a really special experience.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing watching professional golfers hit a ball as just a regular old person. At least I'll speak for myself on that, right? And to see what they're able to do is just incredible.
It is. And so I play a lot. And one day I got home and my wife said, "How'd you play?" I said, I didn't play that great. She goes, "For someone who plays so much golf, you think you'd be better?" And it's like, that is the worst thing you could say to me. And so it's just amazing when these people have such talent or are so good at something. I wish I was good at golf like that, but say la vie.
Well, look, it's one of the things that a lot of times we talk about with athletes, and we talk about business. And I say to the athletes who are now trying to transition into the world of business, I'm like, the amount of time that you spent, the amount of time that you practiced, the amount of work, the amount of time you spent working out to get good at your sport, that's what we do in business as well. So if you want to transition, it's a similar kind of dedication. I mean, we work hard. We do a lot to do what we do in our job, to try to do the best that we can. And they're, for them, they have to do the same thing. So we can't spend that much time on golf.
I can't. But when you think about it, I'd rather be a great golfer or be really good at Excel. I take golf any day.
Well, what is your favorite part of your job today?
Favorite part of my job, I would say we get to do really amazing things, and we get to meet really interesting people, which is always fun. It makes the job fun. But to me, the most interesting part is the relationships. And I just find it really engaging to be able to build relationships with people from all different parts of the world, all different backgrounds. And when they call and they need something, they need your help or my help, they want our advice, or they want to hire us for something that's really important to them, or they've got this really vexing issue and they want us to help them solve it. That's the favorite part of my job, because they can call lots of people that do what we do, but they decided to call me or my colleague or JP Morgan. That's the favorite part of my job.
That's awesome. So, over your career, even just growing up, was there ever do you have a mentor or a coach or someone who helped shape you today?
Sure. So I always answer this one with, the most important people are my parents, right? You are a product of where you come from. And, I owe a lot to them for where I came from and teaching me right from wrong and how to be a good person. In the business world, I've been really lucky to have people along the way that have taken a great interest in me at Bear Stearns, client side at JP Morgan. And so at Bear Stearns, there was a couple of folks, I'm not going to name anybody, but a couple of folks who were who really took an interest in me and made a huge difference when I was young and impressionable, and just watching them manage clients and be thoughtful and be honorable and be ethical in a business that isn't always ethical, and integrity first. Like, they taught me so much. And still to this day, I often think to myself, what would they do if they were in my position? It's sort of been a guiding light. When I got to JP Morgan in 2008, tough time, financial crisis, new person in a new investment bank. I had a couple of clients, a CEO and a CFO at one company, that had come from an industrial company and were now running a media company. And they were so helpful to me, right? They just built my confidence up, and they, listened to me when I had issues, and made sure that people at JP Morgan knew that, I knew what I was doing. And they were unbelievably important to me, just getting, accepted at JP Morgan. I'm forever grateful to them. And then lastly, I'll name this person, but our CEO, Jamie Dimon, he's not a mentor to me per se, but we interact with him on a frequent basis. And, he has the courage of his convictions. He says what he believes. He is a true leader in every way. And, it's fun to go work at a place with someone like that, who's at the top, who instills, right and wrong in the organization, and is easily accessible and helpful whenever you need it.
I mean, I normally ask our guests, what does it mean to be a leader? But I mean, everything that you just described about what you've learned, what you do, having, doing things the right way, having someone like Jamie, who you get to work with and see how he leads. I mean, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah. When I think about leaders, when I want to be led, I want someone who inspires me. I want someone who can push to get the best out of me. I want someone who can be decisive and make a decision. It may not always be right, but they have the ability to make a decision. And you want them to be someone that you look up to. And that's what I find always motivated me. And not every great executive or great business person is a great leader, but it's hard to be a great leader.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. I mean, as you said, it's a lot of times you're making decisions, right? You're having to make a decision that sometimes not everyone may agree with, but it's something that you gotta go with all the information and data that you can get, as well as your gut at some points.
And it may be wrong, right? But ultimately, if you make a wrong decision, you got to encourage people that brush it off and move on. You made a mistake, and learn from it the next time. And so it's a lot of leading is about confidence.
Absolutely. I mean, has there been a situation in your career where, let's just talk, I hate when people ask, what was the decision that was the wrong thing, the thing you didn't do, but something that was good, something that was really good with you. And maybe it's just that all these years staying at JP Morgan, and probably had opportunities to go other places. Mm-hmm. They probably, I'm sure is there something in your career that said, that was a really great thing. I'm really happy that it worked out this way.
I've been very fortunate. I've been at the same place for 27 years now or so, with an asterisk because of the merger. But, the grass is always greener until it isn't. And so I've always said I want to be at a place where they value what I do. I like the people that I work with. We have a great platform. It's really interesting. And I've been fortunate. And so I don't know that there's one moment that is sort of defines everything. And I hope if there is, it hasn't happened yet. I'd like for it to be 5 or 10 years in the future.
But you could be that guy that figures out college sports.
I could solve college sports. I could solve.
You hear that?
Solve PGA Live. You heard it here first. And so when my clients are happy, that's what makes me happy. When we've done a good job and they appreciate it, and we've done what we said we're going to do. That's what makes me go.
Well, I certainly appreciate you coming in here, to our studio here at 76 Capital to do this interview on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show, hearing all the things that you've done in your career, really listening and just so excited to hear your excitement and passion for the sports industry, as like we have here, thinking about all the big ideas and big things that are going to be happening over time. I mean, it's truly exciting. It's something it's not just a U.S. thing. It is a global thing that's happening right now. Sports is at it is an unbelievable high, and it is something that really does bring people together, and that's something that certainly means a lot to us here. And there's going to be a lot more to do, and hopefully we'll get to do some really special deals together in the future. So thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
All right. Well, this has been a great episode of our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great day.